Welcome to Deep Bear Sleep. Tonight, let yourself settle. Let your body find its heaviest, most comfortable position. Let your hands rest open or folded, whichever feels like letting go. And as you close your eyes, allow this story to meet you exactly where you are. Tired, perhaps, and ready to be carried somewhere quiet. Somewhere near the sea. Her name was Vera. She had kept the light at Halverson Point for 11 years, and in that time she had learned the particular language of the sea at night, the way it breathed differently in June than in December, the way the fog moved like something that had its own slow intentions, the way a calm night still carried sound if you knew how to listen. Tonight was the eve of the summer solstice. The longest day of the year was just a few hours away, and the sky above Halverson Point had not yet decided whether to deepen into full dark or hold on to the last of its pale blue light, somewhere between dusk and something softer still. Vera stood at the base of the lighthouse tower, her hand resting on the old iron door. The paint was worn smooth there, worn to the bare metal by 11 years of her palm, and 100 years of palms before hers. She pressed her hand flat against it for a moment, as she always did before climbing. A small ritual, a greeting. The door swung open with its familiar sound, not quite a creak, more of a low, considered sigh, and she stepped inside. The stairs wound upward in a tight spiral. She knew every step, 37 of them, and the 14th one had a slight give on the left side, and she always stepped right. Her boots made soft, unhurried sounds against the iron treads. The walls curved close on either side, and the air inside the tower was cooler than the night outside. Stone cool, clean, a little mineral, the way old buildings hold their own climate against the world. She climbed slowly. There was no reason to hurry. The light was already running, as it always was after sundown, its great slow rotation sending its beam out across the water every 4 seconds. She had set it herself at dusk, and it needed her now only for the watching, which was the part she had always loved best. At the top of the stairs, she turned the second iron latch and stepped out onto the gallery. The sea spread before her like a living thing drawing breath. For a moment, she simply stood and let herself take it in. The sky above the water had gone the color of a blue mussel shell, deep and quietly iridescent, not quite black, holding just enough light to make the horizon visible as a long silver line between what was sea and what was sky. The stars were beginning to appear. Not all at once, but one by one, unhurriedly, the way things appear when they are ready. The water was calm tonight, unusually calm for the point, which usually caught the wind coming around the headland. But this was Solstice Eve, and the sea seemed to know it. The swells were long and low and slow, rolling in from somewhere far out and spending themselves gently against the rocks below, with a sound like a long, deep exhale. In and out, in and out. Vera wrapped her hands around the iron railing. It was cool against her palms. She breathed in the salt air, which had a particular quality on Solstice Eve. Thicker, somehow, more fragrant, as though the sea had turned something up from its depths in honor of the long day ending. Below her on the rocks, the tide pools glimmered in the sweep of the lighthouse beam. Every 4 seconds, the light passed over them and they caught it, briefly silver white, and then they were in the soft dark again, holding starlight instead. She had first come to Halverson Point in her early 50s, a time when life had asked her to begin again. She had wanted solitude, yes, but more than that, she had wanted slowness. She had wanted to live at the pace of tides rather than the pace of calendars. And the lighthouse had given her that. It had given her the discipline of the light, its dependable rhythm, its obligation to keep shining regardless of weather or season or mood. And it had given her the vast, unhurried company of the sea. Now she was 63, and she had handed in her formal papers the previous spring. This season at Halverson Point would be her last. After the summer, a younger keeper would come. A man in his 40s, she had been told, who had kept lights in the north. She wished him well. She hoped he would learn the 14th step. She hoped he would stand on this gallery on a solstice eve and feel what she was feeling now. The lighthouse beam swept out again, out and out and out, reaching across the dark water, and somewhere far off at the edge of its range, a buoy answered with its own small blinking light. One brief reply, and then silence, and then again. Vera smiled. She had always found comfort in that exchange. The lighthouse offering its steady, patient announcement. I am here. The shore is here. You are not alone in the dark. And the buoy out there in the deep water answering quietly back. A conversation carried on for decades, long before her, and continuing after. The air moved gently against her face. Not quite a breeze. More like the sea breathing. She closed her eyes and let herself feel it. The coolness of it, the faint brine, the way it touched her hair and the sides of her neck and settled again. Below, the waves continued their slow procession. Each one arrived from a great distance, carrying whatever it had carried all that way, and released it here, against these particular rocks, on this particular night. She liked to think about that sometimes, the long journey of a wave, how it had begun somewhere far out in open water and traveled, and arrived here at last. She opened her eyes. The stars had continued to emerge while her eyes were closed. There were many more now. The summer constellations she knew well, and the fainter stars between them, and below them all, their doubles in the water, scattered and shifting gently with each passing swell. She found the constellation she always looked for first, the one she had named for herself, unofficially, in her 3rd year at the point, a loose cluster near the southern horizon that looked to her like a woman leaning slightly forward, hands clasped, considering something. She had never told anyone about the name. Some things were only for yourself. The lighthouse turned. The beam swept. The sea received it. Vera moved slowly along the gallery, trailing her hand along the railing, making her unhurried circuit. This was her routine on clear nights, to walk the full circle of the gallery, pausing at each quarter to look out in that direction, giving equal attention to each face of the world. North, where the headland rose dark and solid, and the first pale smudge of a lighthouse on the next point showed faint on the horizon. East, where the sea went on until it became sky. South, where the stars lay thick and still above the water. West, where the land rose behind the lighthouse, the meadow of seagrasses, silver in the low light, moving in slow conversation with the night air. She paused at the west railing and looked at the meadow for a long time. In the morning, she knew, the grasses would be full of sound. The birds that nested in them, the insects, the wind with its daytime voice. But now the meadow was quiet, and the grasses moved in their slow, collective way, bending together and recovering, bending and recovering, like something breathing and vast. There was a bench up against the lighthouse wall. She had placed it there herself in her 2nd summer. An old wooden bench, painted gray, weathered now to something closer to silver. She went and sat on it, setting her back against the cool stone of the tower. From this angle, she could see the sky above the meadow, and the first stars reflected in the small freshwater pond that sat at the meadow's center. The pond was perfectly still from here, a mirror lying flat in the dark grass. The stars in it were as clear as the stars above, and for a moment the world seemed to have a double: the sky above and the sky below, and the meadow between them, and herself sitting quietly between two infinities. She breathed, in, slowly, and out. The lighthouse turned above her head, its beam passing in its 4-second sweep, and when it passed over the pond, the water lit briefly silver white before returning to its quiet reflection of the stars. For a long time she sat like that, not thinking about the future, not counting the remaining nights, simply present in the particular beauty of this one, which was given freely, as all beautiful things are given, without condition, without instruction, available to anyone willing to sit still long enough to receive it. Somewhere below the gallery, a seal called once from the rocks. A soft, low sound, almost conversational. Then silence. Vera smiled again. Seals had always seemed to her like beings that understood something important about belonging to a place. They hauled out on the same rocks for generations. They recognized the lighthouse. She had sometimes wondered over the years if the seals recognized her, if they had noticed her consistency the way she had noticed theirs, if there was some equivalent in the seal world of the comfort she felt seeing them in their usual spot. The seal called once more, softer this time, trailing off. She thought, yes, you are welcome. The rocks are yours as much as mine. Time passed gently. The stars turned their slow arc. The swells continued their patient arrival and release. The lighthouse beam made its 4-second rounds, faithful and unhurried, the same as it had been for 140 years, the same as it would be for whatever years came after her. Around what she judged to be midnight, she had left her watch below deliberately, wanting this watch to be untimed. The sky completed its change. It was fully dark now, the last of the solstice gloaming finally released. The darkness was warm and total and full of stars, and above the eastern horizon the brightest stars had already begun to shift almost imperceptibly toward the west. In a handful of hours the light would return. The longest day of the year would arrive on this coast as it always did. First a lightning above the water, first a blue-gray softness before any color, then the color, then the sun. And the sea would catch it, and the tide pools would catch it, and the meadow grasses would catch it, and the freshwater pond would become gold instead of silver. But that was later. That was morning. Now was the deep middle of the last short night of the year, and Vera sat on her gray bench with her back against the lighthouse tower and felt the stone's stored warmth against her spine, and looked at the stars and the pond and the moving grasses and listened to the sea. Her hands rested open in her lap. She was not sad. She had expected to be, perhaps, on this last solstice eve, had braced herself for something elegiac, something with an ache in it. But what she felt instead was something quieter and more complete than sadness. What she felt was fullness. 11 years of solstice eves and winter storms and spring arrivals and fog-thick autumn mornings. 11 years of this railing and this bench and this stars and this sea. 11 years of climbing 37 stairs and stepping right on the 14th one. All of it was hers. All of it was held inside her. None of it required her to stay. She understood, sitting there in the calm dark, that a place does not stop being yours when you leave it. The sea does not forget who has loved it. The stones hold something of every hand that has rested against them. The lighthouse beam had carried her attention out across the water for 11 years, and some of that attention was still out there, distributed across the dark water, resting on the surface of the waves. You can love a place completely and also let it go. You can hold something and release it and still carry its warmth. She sat a little longer. long enough for the stars to move another fraction of their slow arc, long enough to hear the sea complete what felt like a whole breath, the long inhale of rising swells, the long exhale of their breaking, a pause, and then beginning again. Then she rose from her bench. She walked the gallery once more, slowly, the full circle. North, east, south, west. She looked in each direction without urgency, without gathering or memorizing. Simply looking, the way you look at something when you trust that it will stay with you. At the east railing, she paused the longest. The sea lay out before her, dark and calm and enormous. The buoy blinked its one small answering light at the edge of the beam's reach. The stars lay doubled in the water. The swells moved in their long, slow arrival. She breathed it in one more time. The salt and the cold and the vastness and the quiet. Then she laid her hand on the railing. One last moment of contact, warm palm to cool iron, and turned back toward the tower door. Inside, she made her way down the 37 stairs, stepping right on the 14th. She crossed the keeper's room with its low lamp and its familiar table and the cup she had left there before climbing, and she went to the narrow window that looked out east toward the water. The beam turned above her. She could see its sweep from here, the way it went out across the water and returned and went out again. Patient, consistent, doing what it had always done. Vera set her hand flat against the glass. The sea moved. The stars reflected. The light turned. And she felt, not ending, but arrival. As though the whole of these 11 years had been moving toward exactly this still, sufficient moment. As though this was not a last watch at all, but a completed one. A circle closed gently and fully with no loose threads, with nothing left unsaid. She was tired now. Pleasantly, deeply tired. The way the body becomes after a long day spent in good air, doing good and simple work. She let the warmth of that tiredness move through her, down through her shoulders, down through her arms and her hands, still resting against the cool glass, down through her chest and her belly, softening, down through her hips and her legs, all the way to the floor beneath her feet. She let herself become heavy and still. Outside, the sea continued. The lighthouse beam continued. The stars continued their slow and ancient turning. And inside, at the east window, Vera breathed. In slowly and out. With everything given and everything received, and nothing left to carry into sleep but the sound of the water, arriving and releasing, arriving and releasing, on and on through the long solstice night, all the way to morning. For more episodes, visit deepbearsleep.com.